Welcome back and welcome to the first lesson in the Python fundamentals. First, let's quickly review the file that we set up last lesson and how to run it. So we have some code here that prints out the words within it to the console. So we've got our file, it's called hello.py, all Python files end in the format .py, and to run it we go to our terminal, open that up. If we're on Windows we type Python, if on Mac we type Python 3, and then we type the name of the file. So you can also use the autocomplete. If I type H and then tab, that'll autocomplete the appropriate file. I can press enter to run it, and we can see it prints out that text. So the first thing that we're going to look at are the simple data types for singular pieces of data in Python. So there's 4 different ones. We have what's called a string, which is this part here. And a string is any text that's contained between speech marks or contained between single speech marks or apostrophes. So these would both be examples of a string. You could have a single word, you could have a single letter, you could have a whole novel. It's just anything that's contained between 2 speech marks or 2 apostrophes. Next we have integers, so these are numbers, whole numbers. So for example the number 1, we can see in VS Code it's also a different colour from the string. Number 123, that would also be an integer. A million, that would be an integer. And also any negative number, any negative whole number would also be an integer. So negative 150 or negative 1500. The other simple numerical data type is called float, and this is a decimal number. So if we did 1, this would be an integer, and if we did .0, this would become a float. So you might think this is the same as the number 1, but in Python terms this is not the same as 1. This is a different number because it's a float. So we could do 1.15, we could do any number, I'm not going to read this out, and it just has to have a decimal point. And it can have any amount of digits after the decimal, and also for a negative number as well, this would also be a float. And the final type is a bool, or a boolean, and this is a binary true or false. So true or false. So something is true, it's working, or it's false, it's not, and this can either be, a bool could only be one of these 2 options. So we have our 4 basic types: a string, an integer, a float, and a bool, a boolean. If we want to do something with this information, we want to make use of variables. And variables are just like in algebra. So for example, in algebra we maybe have x equals 1. So this is like a simple algebraic expression. We have our variable on the left hand side, we've got an equal sign, and we've got the value that it equals. So x equals 1. Another variable could be name. We could say that name is the string Ross. Or we could have a variable is working, and we could say true, so it is working. Or we could say false, it's not working. So any data type can be assigned to a variable, and we don't need to indicate anything special. We just have to set up a variable name and say that we've got an equal sign and what it equals. So variables we can manually set, like we're doing here, we're assigning them values, and we can also allow users to set them. So we can use a function called input to do this. So we could say a variable called name, and this equals input, brackets, what is your name? Now if I save this file, come down and run it, so Python, I'm still in the hello.py file, so I'm going to do hello.py, press enter, and it's giving me a prompt here. So it's giving me the input here, and I can say my name is Ross. Now this information will be saved into this variable. So if we do this again, if we use that print function we learned about earlier, and we pass the name, the variable, into print, what this will do is print out the information, the value that this variable is. So save this file again, Control S or Command S on Mac, and on VS Code you can do up to run the same command previously. So press the up arrow, press enter. What is your name? Ross, and then you can see it prints it out. Now we're going to come back to what input and print are, so they're functions, but we're going to come back to what a function means and how it works in the next lesson. So for now you just need to know, with input you give it a string, and the string that you give it will appear in the console, and then the user will be able to put in a value, type it in, and then this will be assigned to a variable. And then with print, any information that you put inside the brackets will print out in the console. So we can see here, what is your name was printed into the console. I entered Ross, that was saved to the variable name, and then I printed out name, which was Ross. If we just print out Ross, it's not very clear what this information is. So what we can do is format the string, which is what name will be, because input, the value of input will be a string, which I typed in Ross, will be the string Ross, and we can format that to make it look nicer. So we can add another string and add them together. So we can say my name is space, and then we're going to add the string of name in, and that's going to print out instead. So we'll save that, run this again, and we can see it prints out my name is Ross. Adding two strings together like this is called concatenation. Basically addition, we're adding two things together. And this works in a simple case here, but in a more complicated version we need to format the strings a bit more precisely and avoid things like this trailing space on this string. So what we can do is we can add an F, let me delete here, and we want Ross to appear here, the name. So what we can do is we can add an F before the string, and this will make this an F string literal, and this means we can pass in variables to the string and format them correctly. Now to do that we want to add curly braces, and we type in the name of the variable. So the name of the variable is name, and now the value for input will be saved to the variable name, and then name will be inserted in here. I want to see that in action. I can run it down here. I can type in the name I'll do a different name, John. My name is John. So we can see the user is given this input, the user provides the answer, that's saved to the variable name, and then in this string here, or in this prints part here, sorry, then we have the string, the name is inserted, and we've done that by adding an F at the start of the string, then adding in some curly braces, and inside the curly braces we put the name of the variable we want to appear. Now let's do an exercise to practice what we've just learned. If you need some help, look back in the video at what we've just covered, or you can also skip ahead to the solution if you really can't figure it out. So what I want you to do is, using an input, ask the user their favourite fruit, and then print out what their favourite fruit is in a sentence. Take as much time as you need, try some things out. Maybe you want to try and ask the user their favourite fruit and their favourite vegetable. Can you figure out how to ask two different questions and combine them in a sentence? Now let's go over a solution. Before that, I just want to say that these lines up here are comments, and to do a comment we'd use a hashtag at the start of a line, and this means when Python comes to this part of the code it just ignores it, it won't do anything with that. Okay, now on to a solution. So first we want to ask their favourite fruit, so we'll get a variable, we'll call it fruit. We're going to say that equals an input, and we'll say what is your favourite fruit? Question mark space, and then we're going to put that into a sentence. So we're going to print out, we're going to use F and then open speech marks, and we're going to say your favourite fruit is, then we're going to use the curly braces and pass in the variable. So we'll save that, Control S or Command S, and run this file. What is your favourite fruit? Apple. Your favourite fruit is apple. And I also said you could ask someone their favourite veg and combine them into one sentence. So we could say veg equals, and I'm going to copy this line over, Control C, Control V, change fruit to veg, and then we're going to say in the line below, your favourite fruit is blank. Copy this again and paste, lowercase that, your favourite veg is veg. Control S, up in the console to get the previous line, press enter, favourite fruit, apple, favourite veg, carrot, and there we can see it prints them both out. Now let's create a new file and save this code into it because we're going to use this code again in the future. So to do that, press new file. We're going to call it lesson 1, whatever you want to call it, .py. Go back into load.py. You can select it all. We don't need these lines. So select this. I'm going to do Control X, probably Command X on a Mac, and paste that into lesson and save both of these to update it. So next lesson we're going to look at using maths in Python and also understanding functions more, how to use them and create them. And we're going to update this code to be a function. All right, see you next time.